welcome back to the No Score Review Show, where we have in-depth critique and nuanced discussion of some of the latest movies, television, and video games. I am your host, Nick Green, and today we are doing a spooky review of Five Nights at Freddy's, the latest video game to movie adaptation starring Josh Hutcherson and Matthew Lillard. And joining me to review this movie today is Michael Bentley. Michael, welcome back to the show.
It's always great to be here. I love coming down to LA.
And happy Halloween, because this episode, if all else goes to plan, should be airing on Halloween. So happy spooky times to you. A merry Scaremas and a happy spooky year.
That's good. I like that.
You like that? Great. I'm still workshopping things, so we'll see how it goes. This review will be spoiler-free for the first few minutes. There will be an explicit spoiler warning once we want to get into the nitty-gritty of the film itself. But for the first little bit, we'll get into our general thoughts on the film and kind of our expectations going in. Michael, I don't know if we've ever discussed the Five Nights at Freddy's games before, but what were your expectations going into this film? What's kind of, if you want to give maybe a brief history of your just kind of relationship, I guess, with, for lack of a better term, with the game franchise, and your general thoughts on the film.
I think that Five Nights at Freddy's is really, to me, was always just this really weird thing where it kind of just became part of a cultural norm for younger kids. It was just this thing that almost seemed to kind of pop out of nowhere, like Fortnite, but because of just Scott Cawthorn's insanity, they just one after the other, blitzing them out.
Yeah.
My relationship with it was always just it felt very similar to going on a binge in the SCP wiki or the creepypasta wiki to just click around and see what this thing is and that thing is, and maybe watch an explainer video or two. And I've never actually played the games, and I don't think it's funny because I think a lot of the fans of the series have never touched the games.
Yeah.
I think it's it's really funny because it seems to be a property that's enjoyed, or in some cases experienced. I think some people like to hate watch it and hate dive into it. Is through Let's Plays and just through surfing the wiki and stuff. But no, my experience with it has been overall pretty minimal. I'd say my core interest kind of dropped off after the fourth game. I got a little bit more into it with the new one, Security Breach. Watched around, watched the video game, the movie, where it's just someone put in all the cutscenes to the online. But no, it was. And then for the movie itself, I didn't really know what to expect. I didn't really watch the trailers too much. I kind of always figured that I would end up watching it with some friends at some point, be it at the theaters or on Discord or something. And so I was always just one of those things where I knew I would get around to it, kind of thing, where it's it's when they here's the new trailer for the Spider-Man game. It's I don't have to watch that. I'm gonna play it. Why would I watch the trailer?
Yeah, exactly.
So going into it, I don't know. I didn't really have any solid expectations, I should say. I had
went in pretty blind.
Yeah. I would say it met my assumptions of what I thought it would be.
Okay.
Not story beats, but in terms of quality, it met my assumptions in terms of what I thought would happen there.
Well, and you said you streamed it as well, right? You didn't actually go see it at the theater?
Yeah, a friend of mine has
the same
Peacock,
day on Peacock, I think.
A friend of mine had Peacock, so got some candy and watched it with some friends in a Discord call. And
cool.
I think for when we talk more about the movie itself, I'll explain why I think that's maybe the better way to watch it. Just because I wouldn't exactly call it if the director came out and said this movie has to be experienced in cinemas, I'd be no, that's wrong.
Right.
You're wrong.
Yeah. Well, and just speaking more to like general thoughts, like how did you come? Like I know you, it kind of met your expectations. It sounds
Mhm.
like, um, but like what did you kind of think of the film just overall? Where you
Oh, you
kind of
want to
thought,
score? Well,
yeah, yeah, that is what I'm saying.
uh, no, I would overall. I thought it was something that would definitely please fans. I think that if you wanted to watch Five Nights at Freddy's the movie, I think you would be pleased. If you wanted like an introductory to the series to kind of give you the feel of what like the games are like and why people deep dive into this stuff, um not such a good entry point. I would say this is not where you would start with Five Nights at Freddy's, just because
Right,
it feels really ridiculous to even say that like we're like talking about the series,
right,
because like that like it's funny just because like the first game was basically a click and point adventure thing almost, but just like
hmm,
timed, um,
yeah,
and to like have ballooned into this, but no, I'd say if you have a general gist of the series and you have friends who like memes about it, and you're generally in an online space, I'd say it was a pretty good time.
hmm,
But if you were horror buff number 73 and you like your Freddy's and Jason's and The Ring and like Midsummer and that stuff, if you went to this, it would really really feel like a low B grade slasher in
hmm,
terms of like story. In terms of effects, I would
right,
say they did a really good job there, but in
totally.
terms of like a horror movie, it really just does feel almost like you're watching Paranorman or something.
Yeah, yeah. It
Like barring specific points, or like Paranorman didn't go that far, or like it almost feels like if you were like 12 and you were into horror and you got Coraline, and then you had
right,
like a younger sibling who was like 8 and they could handle themselves pretty well, you get them Five Nights at Freddy's,
right.
like
Yeah,
that kind
it
of thing.
seems like it could potentially serve as some good gateway horror, especially for
Hmm.
kids, considering the like tone of the movie. It really only ever gets like leans into the proper horror side a couple times, I would
Hmm.
say.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I in terms of my expectations going in, I think I really set myself up for failure because I was really hoping that it was gonna kind of just embrace that horror side.
Hmm.
The tone, I did watch the trailers, and partly not by choice, just because how frequently I go to the movies nowadays. It's just one of the things I see all the time now. Um, but the tone of the trailer felt very like Blumhouse. Like I'm not
Hmm.
like when Blumhouse works well, it works really well. But then when Blumhouse hits, it's like pretty bad for me anyway. Like it felt very in line with some of the more recent stuff like Megan that came out this year. Like Happy Death Day. I know there's like kind of a cult following for Happy Death Day, and it's kind of a different take on like the slasher genre and everything, and like time loop movies. But like felt very similar to like those and like Truth or Dare and stuff, and some of the like lower tier Blumhouse horror entries. And they make so many of them that it does kind of make sense that like there should be some misses out of all of the risks they take. Um, but yeah, I was like really hoping because my just brief history with the franchise is sort of similar to you. Like I only really have ever experienced these games through let's plays on YouTube and the like lore and Easter egg breakdowns and theory videos. Like the game theory stuff is big with the FNAF fan
Hmm.
base and was one of the things that I was kind of invested in. I definitely started trailing off, especially with the theory stuff. Like I think my personal view on the franchise and like lore overall is it's gotten so out of hand and it's just so
Hmm.
nonsensical that like there's books and stuff and there's like uh weird ectoplasm energy stuff that the like guy harvests from the souls of like dead people to run the animatronics and stuff, and it's just like it's so bonkers crazy that is what like part of the reason I kind of like fell off with that stuff.
Hmm.
Um, I think I've been pretty consistent with like watching every game like through a let's play. Security Breach was kind of the least interesting of them all, and I don't even think I've watched any of like the lore stuff behind that side, just because by that point I've kind of been checked out. Like everything after I think um, the like pizzeria simulator, I think I was pretty checked out of afterwards, and I think that's kind of where the point was, the tipping point for me, where things really started getting out of hand with the books and all of that stuff. Um, and I was really kind of hoping that the movie would maybe kind of go take a like back to basics approach and like strip it back to like what was really
Hmm.
effective about the first few games. It's like it feels like true horror, and then like you could argue like yes, it's all like cheap jump scares, and it's not like there's really any gore or violence on screen. It's just the animatronics popping up and getting you. There's like
Hmm.
implied terror, I guess. Um, and then like from a story standpoint, like from the very beginning there was like no uh obvious story. It was all like relegated to like Easter eggs, and you had to like pay attention to the like little retro arcade animated cutscene type things, right?
Hmm.
So like by no means did it have a compelling story. Like you kind of had to do the homework a little bit, which I think is part of why it became such a phenomenon that it was. It was like one of those um, Easter egg filled, like lore heavy stories that the internet went crazy with. And then the whole kind of um, spiraling of how like it became such a beloved IP for like young kids, because like it
Hmm.
was kind of one of the first like mascot horror games with like cutesy characters, or like more kid friendly characters anyway.
Hmm.
And it just kind of took off, and it was like one of the first horror games that like blew up in terms of like merchandising as well, right? um so yeah, that was kind of it. Like I've definitely kind of distanced myself from the like FNAF franchise and fan base and everything, since it became very much more about crazy lore and Easter eggs, and then just the
Hmm.
kind of co-opting of the kind of younger audience. Not saying that that's a bad thing, it's just like clearly not my demographic anymore. So
Hmm.
like I definitely agree with you in the fact that I think this movie was made for the fans and like the young audience fans. So like I think they'll enjoy it, and I'm happy that there's more gateway horror for kids. um I There is something like nice, and maybe that's just like my history with horror, is like at some point you kind of have to break that threshold of like just introducing them to like true horror, and then it kind of makes or breaks
Hmm.
them into a horror fan. But gateway horror is great. I was like quite disappointed by the film overall. Like I think I say I kind of set myself up for failure in my hopes for it, but I do think like especially based off the trailers and everything, I was off put by it, and I was expecting like not a great level of quality, but I was just so surprised at how much of a non-traditional horror film it was. Like
Hmm.
I feel like there was maybe a few jump scares, and like they were even barely those kind of cheap generic jump scares you get in traditional horror movies, and maybe it was more so the tone of the film overall that really made it
Hmm.
feel different. But like I think there's a definitive point about the halfway point in the movie where something just mind-boggling happens with the characters that they do, and it's like what are we doing here? What even is this movie? And it like I think that's kind of the check, like the official checkout point. um yeah, just the kind of lack of focus on the horror side of it, the like true horror,
Hmm.
um is what kind of really left a sour taste in my mouth afterwards. And just the fact that it was, yeah, I just don't think it was for my demographic. So I think it was kind of an uphill battle from the very beginning. Um,
Um, I
so yeah.
think I think the way that me and my friends enjoyed it was we kind of just went in for the novelty of it because we're
Hmm.
not like we're in our 20s. We're not really playing the games or really surfing the wikis anymore. Like
Yeah.
Five Nights at Freddy's had its boom with us, and it was like almost like morbid curiosity. Like, why are kids so into this? And like you read it and you laugh at the lore and you make jokes and you look at the memes. And if you go, I think if you go into the movie, um, using like the story and characters as almost like a way to prop up just references,
Oh yeah.
like this is like if it were fucking like Marvel or something, like something I actually gave a shit about, then I would hate it. But
Right.
purely just because like Five Nights at Freddy's was like it has its fan base and diehards, but like on the general internet, it's just such a joke. It's
Yeah.
like it's almost ironic to enjoy it. And if you go in there with just like it's that thing, it's that thing, it's on a movie, it's on screen,
Right.
that's
Yeah. Yeah.
funny. It's funny that they put money into it and like thought of that.
Sure.
Like if you go into it with like cynicism almost,
Yeah.
I think it's a really fun time with friends.
Okay. Yeah.
But that's not to say I don't think there wasn't any effort put into it. I think it was kind of like it's problematic in the fact that like here's the first game. The first game is you, a security guard in a chair, watching cameras,
Hmm.
and do that for 5 nights. And the end of the game is you get a paycheck, and you
Right.
can't. And to put that into a movie, there's things I guess you could like move around with it. I guess in terms of how to get I forget the main guy. Well, his name is Michael.
Mike.
Yes,
Yeah.
my name is
Yeah.
Michael. But not the Michael from the games. Because, see, that's the thing where you get into the lore of the games, and that's where things are like. That's, I guess, where it's kind of like, I'm not like protective of the Five Nights at Freddy's lore, but it's like,
No.
it kind of shows like how little they had to grasp with it just because like they started pulling stuff from other games where
Yeah.
like Vanny, or sorry,
Vanessa.
Vanessa,
Yeah.
she's a character
Security breach, right?
from Security Breach, yeah,
Yeah.
which is like almost 10 years after the first game, and
Right.
they're introducing her now. And the whole thing of like, that's in like, I think the second or third game, and that happens off screen. And it's just like, it shows like how much they pulled in a lot
Well,
of stuff from later games.
yeah.
Sorry. I'm sorry. You're
Slight
gonna have to
slight
bleep that out.
spoilers a little
Yeah.
bit. I'll bleep that part out, but
Okay.
we can go over
Uh,
that more in depth. Yeah.
yeah. But my overall point is that like, it kind of shows like how much they had to pull from other games to like prop up any version of a story.
Totally. Totally.
Um,
Yeah. I
but
agree.
that,
It's like it's that like talking about uphill battles, like there's so little to work with in those first few games, especially in terms of narrative, that like I completely understand the challenge of trying to form a proper conventional narrative out of the whole thing. And I think
mhm,
that might be also where the kind of main family drama arc or focus came from. Whether that was like a good choice is a different thing. Like personally, I wasn't like I was bored with like that being the focus of the film. Like I feel like that
mhm,
took up a large part of the movie for me. Um, and yeah, like the inherent like bringing your protagonist back to a place full of killer animatronics for 5 nights uh is already such an impossible task to write believably, right? Like I actually
mhm,
think they did it quite well considering the context of it all. But yeah, I don't know. um it's definitely uh like a large mishmash because I don't know. I think largely from what I've seen on the internet, the fan base is really gravitating towards it, and
mhm,
they're. I mean, I'm not in the fan base like any in any capacity really, so maybe I'm not seeing the discourse between like uh screwing with the timeline and characters and whatnot, but
mhm,
um yeah, like you touched on the amount of work put into this movie, and I
mhm,
think like that was something else that I like that hit me is this, because this didn't really work for me, and I don't think, because like you kind of touched on it as well, I don't think it'll work for general audiences as much. um but it's not even like a movie that you could write off as like producer interference and studio interference, because like Scott Cawthon felt very involved, and I think like the level of detail in this film and like
Mhm.
the production design and everything, the animatronics themselves look really good. I think the level of care put into this film is actually there. So it's almost more frustrating for people like us, maybe, or me, that wanted a little bit more like
Mhm.
horror out of it, or just like compelling narrative, I guess. But yeah.
I don't know. I kind of went into it not really expecting a compelling
Yeah.
narrative
Yeah. I think,
because it's just like it's the same reason I can really vibe with the Sonic the Hedgehog movies. They're not like the games. They're not like
right.
the comics, which I actually enjoy. I really, if you're all a fan of Sonic, I really recommend checking out the IDW comics. They're fantastic.
Okay.
But I can vibe with all the shit they fuck around with because I can turn my brain off and be like, oh
Right.
my gosh, he's on the screen, he's on the movie, and there's little references and Easter eggs. And I
Yeah.
think that's kind of like where people have like found like a happy middle ground with video game movies to like have maybe a larger conversation because video game movies like now are getting big,
Hmm.
but I don't know if there's really been a like quote unquote good and like respectful video game movie. Like yeah, there's the Super Mario Brothers movie, but that one has a lot of issues in the fact that it's not really a story so much as it is like a tour of the Nintendo library.
Right. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
but
The
I think the reason fans are gravitating towards this and other video game movies is because um, they kind of like we kind of know it's a commercial in a way,
hmm
but so long as and there's enough artistic freedom in there and enough like joy put into it, like there's a soul to it, and there you do
Right.
have people who actually care about it. Um, to have like bits and pieces where fan can gravitate towards, I think that's what makes it successful
That's
as
a good
compared
point.
to
Yeah.
something something like I'm trying to think of other video game movies like
Like Assassin's Creed, Warcraft, probably those
mhm,
probably feel much more hollow and much more like just like a put that IP brand on this generic
mhm.
script, right?
I'm thinking even like Doom, like
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
that was like the I'm talking about the original one. I haven't seen the newer one that they put out for $225,000, like the real
I don't know
super
if
low
I've
budget one.
Oh, I
Uh,
don't even know if I've Oh, is that like Doom Annihilation or something?
yeah, yeah,
Is
yeah,
that what it's called? Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I think I saw that like blip on the internet very quickly, and then it faded almost immediately.
But
No, the Dwayne Johnson Doom.
yeah, no, like just like taking those basic stories and like warping them into something else,
Hmm.
and just being like making it feel like video game movies will come at a cost to what made
Right.
the video game cool and
Yeah.
fun. Because I I'm having a difficult time explaining my thoughts, I would say, but it's just kind of like I feel like there's just at least been a gravitation towards producers and companies slowly realizing like, okay, we it's going to be a commercial still. That's what it's always going
Right.
to be to like buy into the larger video game world of it all.
Hmm.
But if you let the hands off enough to put fun and joy and some creativity in there, people gravitate towards it. And to
Yeah.
that end, I would point at something like the fact that the suits are practical. They built them,
Totally. Totally.
and like if you want like a really good part of the movie, I'd say where you can see the creativity and like the joy of the filmmaking being in there, you would look at the bit where the Foxy chase scene, like
Hmm.
later on when so like are we in spoil territories now, or are we
Well,
like
I think yeah, we'll get there very shortly. Like
mhm,
I think just to kind of wrap up this spoiler-free section, I think I understand where you're coming from. Like, I think it becomes just more of a subjective argument at that point of like how they put the care and effort into the way they did.
mhm,
But there's definitely a level of respect I have for this movie and the amount of involvement Scott Cawthon had. Um, and that totally makes sense where like I think we're only the kind of harsh reality of it all, especially with video game movies, is that they're going to just be commercials, and I think there's only a certain level of expectations we could put on these films, um, because I think for the amount of adaptations we've gotten, I personally anyway, I would say like The Last of Us, it's not even a movie, so it's
Hmm.
kind of out of the conversation, but like The Last of Us is the only adaptation to me anyway that is like so faithful to the source material and also still like is able to deliver like grade A storytelling and has the level of care and production quality and attention to detail and like caliber of filmmaking
Hmm.
behind it. Like you're just like there's too many working or moving parts, I should say, in film and TV for those stars to align every time or even more often than we would like. So I completely agree with the kind of like you can tell this has more effort in it, especially compared to a lot of the video game movie adaptations we've gotten in the last few years. I would say like the Sonic and Mario movies are really the only other ones that kind of get close.
Hmm.
Um, so yeah, with that, we're gonna do spoiler territory now. So if you don't want to know any other details about the FNAF movie, then pause the review here. Go and see it. You can even check it out at home because it's streaming on Peacock. Not It's not a sponsor or anything. I don't know why. It's just go do that if you want, I guess. Um, but yeah, spoilers from here on out. We're gonna get into our highlights and lowlights now.
Hmm.
Did you want to talk about that, Foxy Chase, before
Oh
you forget?
yes, that was just
So
that
you're
bit
talking about
where,
the like the very end one, right, with the ball
yeah,
pit?
where
Okay.
it's well, a bit before the ball pit, even when he's chasing the girl through the arcade, and just like the color
Okay.
and the lighting and the camera angles, like him slowly twisting his head, and
Hmm.
like you see the one glowing eye, and it's just like that's stuff you see from a storyboard, and that takes effort and timing and planning to get
Sure.
just right. And that had a really, really solid aesthetic. Like
Hmm.
there were a couple shots from there from that chase scene that you could make into a poster, and that's the
Right.
kind of stuff I always love seeing from movies. To call back to the last time I was on here, like The Nun too. Like there were like just like a stroke of visual inspiration when like it was The Nun, but it was just like her face was just like a black hole kind of thing, and
Right.
just like seeing those moments, you're like, okay, someone gave a shit there. It
Right.
wasn't just like, okay, everyone on set, we pre CG planned all of this. Point the camera there. Do your lines. I want this shot done by lunch so we can
Yeah.
get done as soon as possible.
Hmm.
Like maybe Marvel does sometimes.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Yeah. I definitely think some of like that was probably one of the only kind of scare sequences I could remember from the film. Like this film,
mhm,
again, this is kind of my personal takeaways from this of it just not falling into that traditional horror film like uh, framework, I guess.
mhm,
Like there was barely any sort of like setup and payoff that you would find in horror films in this
mhm.
movie. Like the closest I think some of the third act stuff we got was pretty well done. The next closest thing I would say would be the like break in with the like
Yeah.
delinquents or whatever.
Well, not
But
delinquents.
even
They're in like their mid 30s. They're not delinquents. Let's be solid here.
Wikipedia, the plot synopsis on Wikipedia calls them delinquents, and I like that, so I'm just rolling with it. Um, Also,
We gotta
just like
hurry back to
quick,
class, man.
how do
30-year-old
you do, my
biker man.
fellow kid, my fellow? What does he call them in the meme? I don't know, fellow kids.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, the that sequence just felt very ineffective to me.
I like
And
the
then
ending of that sequence. The ending of that sequence was very well played, where
yeah, but
she
that
gets.
also was very. Almost felt like completely disjointed from the rest of it.
Well, the thing with that is that comes into the part where it's problematic. Oh yeah, I was going to say, so it's a very funny thing that this movie shares with another movie people know very well, which is Dune. Um, if you do not read the books, or AKA like have like the if you don't have like the lore before,
Equating Dune to the Five Nights at Freddy's
it
books
has
is
that in.
something I would never have guessed.
But no, I'm equating the movies. Like you're gonna hear me.
Okay.
If you don't know the lore beforehand, it doesn't hit as hard because
Okay.
the ending. Because here's the thing: if you watch Dune, yeah, listen to
Yeah.
this. If you
Okay.
watch Danny Villeneuve's Dune 2022,
Yeah.
2022, right? It was last year,
21. 21.
21,
Yeah.
and you have not read the book Dune or
Yeah.
like watch an explainer, you will be fucking
In the
like,
dark.
why is he having visions about red sand? What the fuck's going on? Who
Right.
are these bitches in black?
Yeah. Yeah.
Why are they putting so much importance on Duncan Idaho? He
Right.
dies in the first 50 minutes of this 3 hour movie, blah blah blah. And it's also like, that's the thing, is if you know about the bite of 87 in the FNAF lore, if you know about
Right.
that, and you see her putting her head up to Freddy's mouth, and then it's funny because in a way, her getting bitten in half is almost less horrific than her having her skull like somewhat crushed, because that's
Yeah.
what happens to the
I
kid.
think also you could argue like the execution of,
Yeah.
or pun intended, the execution of that scene is less like, it's not, because this film's really not that gory
Hmm.
or bloody. Like that's probably the bloodiest part of the movie.
Yeah.
And you just see her silhouette get like chopped in half
Yeah.
basically.
Which is
But
like
like that's
funny.
also a rework of, if you know the FNAF lore, like because I
Yeah.
think that was the bite of 87, and someone
Yeah.
gets part of their head chomped off
Yeah, so
basically, right?
it's
So
almost less gory or less horrific. But like the thing with that is like, you're expecting that. You're expecting like a head chomp,
right.
and then like they subvert it and then
Sure.
have her
Yeah.
bitten in half, and like that's kind of like a, like, whoa, whoa, let's shock the system. And that's fun for people. That's fun for the memers. That's fun for the people who
Sure.
watch the videos and have like put like the bite of 87 over the fucking Hindenburg or something.
Yeah.
Uh, uh,
Jesus Christ.
like that shit like that shit will catch you. But then if you go in and you're like, oh, it's October, a lot of people are going to Five Nights at Freddy's, that's the horror video game, right? And then
Mhm.
you watch that like chase scene, it will be hollow because you're like, you why do you care that the rabbit killed someone? Why do you care that the chicken's turning its head? It's like, it doesn't hit. But then if
Yeah.
you're like a fan of it and you've joked around with your friends of it and like you've got that ironic cynicism towards it, it's very funny and it's very fun, and it almost feels like it almost feels like you're watching something like a really big joke that like it's directed towards you, where it's
Right.
like that, like Chica turns her head towards camera with an angry look, and it's almost like the filmmakers are like, yeah, we know what's going on, we're doing, like, this isn't scary but it is fun, isn't it? And
I
I
think,
at that point I agree with them.
yeah, I think personally anyway, I think a lot of that effort is put on the audience though, because
Hmm.
I found this film to take itself seriously way more than it kind of poked fun at itself. And I think that's what a large part of why it didn't work for me is because you see like very microscopic glimpses of like the self-referential stuff, or the
Hmm.
just the kind of like poking fun at the ridiculousness of the whole situation. I think it plays it way more earnest and way more seriously a lot more of the time, um, which just makes it feel like kind of a slog. And like, because if, especially if you're of the demographic that like knows nothing about the games and only knows Five Nights at Freddy's because there's a new movie coming out, um and I think if you're going in thinking like, oh, this is a horror movie about killer animatronics, and you go in expecting that, I think you're going to be let down because of just how like how the animatronics are handled. I like still completely agree, the like actual design and production behind the animatronics and bringing in the freaking Jim Henson workshop is a
Oh, I didn't know
huge like
that. Wow.
win.
Hmm.
Yeah, like it shows the level of craft and quality there. I think they look like amazing. I have a little bit of a personal qualm with the design of the eyes. I don't love how emotive the animatronics were, and I don't love the glowing eyes. Like I really would have wished they kind of leaned into just the like the
Hmm.
uncanniness of them being like straight faced and their eyes like don't move, or move like a couple times here and there like you would see in like the Annabelle movies or something. Um and like just the amount that they're actually in the movie, like they're not concealed in shadows. Like they're not trying to hide the monster until the third act. Like they are, and like you can argue again, they are the star of the show. Basically, they're the main
Mhm.
attraction. But like, at least from the whole conventional horror framework, like I was, I was going in, and some other people might go in expecting them to be like a lot more obscured or like featured way less, and not building a fucking fort in the middle of the movie. Like, how did your friend group and you react to that? Did you like burst
They
out laughing? Because like
no, they
that
loved it.
was
They were there for it. They were there for it because they and I can vibe with it purely because I like it when something unexpected happens. And I understand what the point of it was, which is like try and make it more endearing and remind you that there are kids in there and that they are
right.
kids. But like um I don't know, it was just like it was a weird scene. Um and it was like difficult to like take that. Sorry, just like what it was like difficult to take that. I remember like there's bodies rotting somewhere,
Yeah.
and they try and
Yeah.
like brush it aside by like basically saying whenever I should talk about this. William Afton is around.
Right.
When, like he's like influencing them and stuff, which not well explained. That's where like gripes come in, where
No.
it's like you have to know how that works inside the lore for you to like
Otherwise, it's
make the leap
completely
of logic.
unfulfilling. Yeah.
You have to basically know that he's like a magic man sorcerer in the lore because otherwise he just looks like Matthew Lillard on a bad day.
Right.
Um,
Yeah.
but it was also very funny going from the the break-in scene, and seeing the babysitter lady get bitten in half,
Right.
jump to at home, and Vanessa's there and she's like accusing him of drugs, like let's go have a heart to heart by the river, and it's like 10 minutes ago a bitch got sawed in half and we're fucking here now.
Yeah,
So
you
there's
would
like some
expect that scene where they're talking to each other out of like a Lifetime drama or like a like indie film where like people are like overcoming cancer or something. That scene felt very much akin to something like that. I
um
think that just the tonal dissonance, I think, it was a big thing for me. Like, are we taking ourselves seriously? Is this all just kind of a big joke and we're in on it? Is this supposed to be scary? Is this supposed to be a wholesome kind of rescue like
mhm.
thriller to like save these kids? Like I just don't know. Is this a weird like dream like uh thriller drama? Like the
I
whole
didn't mind the
freaking Mike.
I didn't mind the dream sequences. I thought that was a good way. I don't know. I enjoyed it. I don't really have like a big like revolutionary thought on my. I just like, oh, it's fun. It's kind of
Yeah,
like
I
fun to
think
just like have to like have I genuinely thought for a second he was gonna like fight the kids in the dream world, because like how do you as a man like punch a fucking like 12-foot tall animatronic and win? Oh, you go
it's
to the
like that
dreamscape.
scene, the meme scene from Always Sunny in
Yeah,
Philadelphia, when they're throwing the kids.
but then it became unfair when the kids also had like super speed and dream claws. I'm like, oh yeah,
Yeah,
that's not fair.
yeah,
How come Peter doesn't have any, huh?
yeah,
Peter from um
yeah.
but for highlights,
Oh yeah,
Matt
I forgot that's the whole framework of this. What are some
Matt
highlights you have?
Matt Pat showing up, we fucking lost it. Like,
Dude,
because it
because
took
I
us
went to the theater, that was like that felt like a MCU like Endgame
dun,
type thing. It
dun,
was like, oh
dun.
my god, people are losing their shit.
Well, it's because like it took us like 5 seconds to realize it's him, it's the waiter. Like we at least had the luxury of like getting to go back and hear his lines. I don't know if anyone in the theater caught him even say, "But that's the theory."
Oh yeah, dude, because like there it was a let me set it up for you. Like it was the same thing. We didn't know it was him at first because he's kind of
Mhm.
obscured waiting the
Yeah,
table. And then his first close up shot,
yeah.
everyone loses their shit, and then he's like explaining whatever the hell he's talking about because I didn't absorb whatever he was saying because
He's
of all
talking
the
about like
noise.
salt content in the food and stuff.
Yeah, yeah, and then like people kind of quieted down, and then they're like, "But that's just a theory," and then people lost their shit again. It was like, "Oh my god, man,
Uh,
this is
it's,
wild."
I love that. That was great. That was a great fun moment. Sucks that Markiplier couldn't come in as well, but he's
Yeah,
doing Iron Lung, which I'm actually pretty excited for. That's like
yeah,
I like that. Like, not to go off a tangent, but I like that Markiplier is like of like all the movies of all the games he could have done. He was
totally.
like, I want to do like this incredibly dark, like excessively morbid take on like the fragility of life and
Yeah.
existentialism and loneliness in an unforgiving universe. Like, okay, Mark, I guess if
Go
you
off,
really
I
want.
guess. Yeah. Well, and like that
Uh,
was a recent game he played too. Like that was
yeah,
within the last couple years. It's not even like something that was from his backlog. So funny. But
like
yeah,
sucks that because he was supposed to play the first security guard.
he
That would
was,
have
yeah.
been that would have
But
been great.
like honestly, I'm not even that heartbroken because we are already getting two more movies for this.
Yeah,
So he
he'll
could
show up.
easily make a cameo in one of those. So
Um, and then the lawyer who played Doug. Fuck, he's hilarious. I love
he was very
just.
good. I very much love that. You
I
could
just
kill him and
realized.
he tries to clamber out of the booth.
I just realized I shouldn't be here for this. He's
He's
like
like,
sitting there in the principal's office, like
yeah, he's like,
melting.
some,
Um,
that was some very good like visual comedy acting.
character
Yeah,
actor for all. Like, I hope he's in all the movies. I hope he gets to reveal to be like William Afton's dad.
yeah.
I just
Speaking of,
realized the animatronics are alive.
he goes to the pizzeria for some reason. Yeah. Speaking of William Afton, that's
Matthew
like
Lillard.
it's a weird kind of highlight low light because like for when Matthew Lillard is on screen, I really liked him and I think he like gave a pretty good performance of like hamming up William Afton at the
Hmm.
very end. But like he was just not, and I get it from like the reveal standpoint of the whole story, but like just the underutilization of him, and I guess we'll probably get more of him in the sequels. Um, but like to go from seeing him at the very beginning and then not seeing him at all until the very end, and like he's not even on screen for that long before he gets like spring trapped essentially.
Hmm.
um
Sprung
I don't know,
trapped.
that kind of like just sat wrong with me. I don't know, but I do like Matthew Lillard and I love that he like gave it his all. um
I do love Matthew Lillard. No, no, I agree. It is just weird because, um, there's like, I feel the story would have worked better if they stuck with original lore because the security guards you play as in the games are William Afton's kids. And then they made a
right.
really big point of being like, I should have killed you too, Michael Schmidt. And it's just like, At the very least, I am glad for the fact that Vanessa and Michael were clearly building a romance. And I was like, but if she's his daughter,
Yeah.
and then here's
And
her,
then he's
oh
his,
no,
yeah.
oh no, um,
Well,
no,
they
but like,
sidestepped that, thankfully.
no, it's like it's to give or take for me. Like that's one point where I'm like, I feel the story would have been stronger because like the dad that they had there at the picnic table during the dream sequence of like I'll give you back your family and junk if you just give me your sister. The dad didn't even say anything. Like he had it. Like William Afton had like a third prop there, and it's just like I don't know what your dad's like, so I can't have him say anything. I'll just have him say, "You go, yeah."
Yeah.
So it's like at that point, why didn't you have just no dad there and just have William Afton be his dad, and then
Yeah.
Vanessa? I don't know. Like Vanessa had like could have just been like a kid he kidnapped or something. I don't know. There's changes to the story I would have made, but Matthew Lillard was a treat. Just like all the way through, he was just fun to have there.
Yeah.
He really channeled that Scream energy at the end there when
Totally.
he put on the suit.
Yeah. Well, I
Just like
like it felt, and I was
it's
doing this before.
insulated.
I, I I could have swore there was like a Scream reference at the very end when he's like talking to Vanessa, being like, "You're not really gonna shoot me, are you?" And then she shoots him. Like I'm pretty sure
I
that setup
loved
is almost beat for beat in the first Scream movie.
I love that because she's like, "You're not gonna shoot me, are you?" And then she shoots him, and like Bonnie and Freddy look at each other like, "Holy shit, she shot him!" Like, whoa.
Right. Yeah.
Um, no, that was he was just great. He was definitely a highlight. And I hope he comes back. I hope it's some Jim
Oh yeah.
Carrey thing where he drops out after the second one. Um,
Well, he's already signed the like 3 film contract, so
so did Jim
unless he finds
Carrey.
a loophole,
So did
did he
Jim
sign a
Carrey.
contract for? The
I
Mask?
think
Was that what it was? Is
no,
that what you
no,
said?
the Sonic, no Sonic,
Oh,
because
Sonic.
he's not
Oh,
coming
okay.
back for number three. He's not
Oh,
coming back for number
really? Oh,
three. Yeah.
damn.
Well,
Okay.
like I wasn't surprised. Like Jim Carrey was like really reluctant to get back into acting, and then um he's like in his late 50s now, early 60s. Like keep that character energy going
Yeah,
at
that's
that
hard
point in
for
life.
sure.
That's a lot.
But yeah,
Um,
I think I feel more confident in like Matthew Lillard
well,
returning.
what if Jim Carrey comes back
Oh,
and Matthew
as
Lillard becomes Doctor Robot, and
oh
they
god.
do like a wife swap, but with
Honestly,
actors?
not a terrible concept, really.
I
I think
can't
they
see
could pull it
Matthew
off.
Lillard. I can't see Matthew Lillard as Doctor Robot.
No.
Like, man, I'm gonna kill that hedgehog. No, I can't. I can't do that.
um, what other lowlights do you have,
Low
if
lights.
anything else?
I feel that like this is more like a nitpick, but I feel like it's something production probably looked into. I don't know why they didn't do it, but it's like the pizzerias in shambles. But then all of the animatronics besides Foxy are in great
Pristine.
condition,
Yeah,
and then
I
it's
had a
like,
big problem with that.
and like because then it's like you're questioning, but then why is Foxy specifically like damaged and shit? They never cover that, but then Freddy and Chica and Bonnie are all fine.
Pristine. Yeah. Yeah, I kind of get it. It's just something that I don't think they really like leaned into from a story exploration standpoint of explaining why they were like that. And you could make that argument of like, oh, everything else is bad, but these three are like in great condition. What's up with them?
Hmm.
Again, not really explored or anything. Um, but like that's something, again, kind of my subjective view on it was like so wish, especially like if they were trying to lean into more horror with it, is like they would have looked much more menacing had they been like
Hmm.
obscured and like in shambles and like deteriorating really badly, right? um I can't remember because like the what's her name? Uh like Party Baby? What's her name from Sister Location?
Party baby.
Something Baby, I think.
Oh, like just like the
The suit.
animatronic.
Yeah. You know what I'm
Hmm.
talking about.
Yeah.
Like that looked way more like horrifying and everything. Um and then did we, am I misremembering, or did we get like a bare bones animatronic
Yeah,
as well?
there was like an endoskeleton
Yeah.
inside of like the storage room.
Oh, okay. But
Um
there wasn't like a chase sequence or like a moment with it, right? That I remember.
no, there
Okay.
wasn't. That shit only happens in, I think, the fourth game where you're the Five Nights at Freddy's museum, and
Right.
then the endoskeletons come. Uh
Um,
Not necessarily a highlight or a low light, but I love that like Vanessa said the line straight, where it was like the pizzeria was a combination of his two favorite hobbies, good
right.
food and
And
highly
lifelike
advanced little.
animatronics. No,
It's like, oh,
I think that was in the information video, the like
oh yeah, yeah, it was the
training
information
seminar
video.
video.
It's just like straight faced line there.
Yeah,
Oh, the informational video, that's a highlight. I love like how that goes to like analog horror at points. I
totally.
wish that like what's the actor's name again? The guy who played Michael.
Josh Hutcherson.
Yeah, I wish that his reaction was pretty muted. Um, and I'm
Well, I
wondering if,
don't think they played it for horror again. Like
well, that's the thing is like his reaction though, should it like playing for horror or not, like feels like he's not bothered by it
yeah,
at
he's
all, because
completely
like
unfazed.
because the first one's just like a kind of a spooky like tape skip. The second time there's like endoskeletons and monster faces, and he's just like, I
Well,
see.
that's weird.
And I think probably because like probably on the day of shooting, probably they were just like, okay, you're watching the informational video, we're gonna splice that in later, like we're just getting your
Sure.
reaction. And then
Yeah.
probably after the fact, they decided, oh, we should like, because like he smacks the TV the first time, so clearly there was a
Hmm.
skip. Probably after the fact, they were like, oh, we'll add a spooky bit at the end. But then I'm assuming they couldn't get him back for another reaction shot, so it just
Maybe. Yeah.
it falls flat. Where like it's a really good moment of like analog horror,
Yeah.
and then it kind of like she's just like, hmm.
Yeah.
See, I did
Yeah.
make
I
it into a
agree.
low light. I'm meeting the show's standards. I thought
There
it
we
was
go.
going to be a
Perfect.
highlight, but it was actually a low light.
Subverting expectations. I love it. That video just also, and again, this is like super nitpicky and like fantasy, but it made me want, I mean, they still could technically do some sort of prequel
Hmm.
if they still get like a lot of success and everything, but like it just makes me want like a 70s or 80s like hyper stylized like Freddy Fazbear's is like at the height of its
Hmm.
popularity, and it's like
You want to
open
see
and
the bite of
running.
87. You want to see a kid with like a
Not
portion of
even
his brain
necessarily
removed.
Bite of 87, but just
You
like
monster. You want to see a kid with his you monster.
you got me. um yeah, I do would just like, I think that could totally lend, but again, like I just don't envision them leaning into that horror like side of everything, which is just so like unfortunate. And I think that's kind of my overall takeaway from this film, is that like I really loved, because I thought I was so intrigued by the like games, and especially the first few, with their like stylization and their aesthetic, their art direction, like all like the sound design and everything. It's a very simple game mechanics and like
Hmm.
setup, but it was so effective. And it was like terrifying. It's still terrifying, honestly. A terrifying concept that could have worked so well in like a feature film format, that that's something I want personally as like a loose fan of these games and this franchise. I was really hoping for like just a, like, even if it wasn't truly terrifying and like the
Hmm.
scariest thing since like so and so, like
Since the
even if it was
Hindenburg.
just more in line with that like conventional cheap horror, like cheap jump scare
Hmm.
stuff, but more leaning into that horror aesthetic, it would have won me over much more. And like the training video is an example of that. I would
Hmm.
have loved to see like an 80s inspired horror film.
Hmm.
uh but yeah.
I
um
think I think my overall perspective of it is that it is going to be, again, like if you're in that specific niche, like two specific niches. If you're a kid who likes Five Nights at Freddy's and just the screams and the jump scare, and you like Matt Pat, it's good gateway horror. You'll have a fun time.
yeah,
If you're going with friends on a Discord call or like to the, I would say this is honestly a better at home movie, because if you fall into the second crowd I'm describing, because you want to point out and you want to be loud and
sure.
like it won't be as rude for other people who are trying to enjoy it legitimately. But if you fall into like kind of like cynical meme crowd, it's a fantastic movie. It like you get to point at the screen and like, oh Matt Pat,
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
like, and you get to laugh at the fact that this like game, like this point and click game, is now this big movie. I
yeah,
think if you fall into one of those two camps, it's great. If you're an avid horror fan, it's meh. It's
yeah.
very meh. I
Just
guess
play the games,
puppetry fans.
honestly.
I guess puppetry fans will enjoy that
Sure.
because, like,
Yeah.
if you're there's
And
a
like
bunch of
film
people.
fans with like some like substantial
Yeah,
production value behind it, right?
yeah. If you're one of the kids who wants to go into production, or like college kids who's like eager to get into production and see like
Honestly, like
good
as
sets and stuff.
all the gripes I have with this film, like I could totally see this, like we talk about gateway horror for kids, but like
Hmm.
totally could be a gateway like filmmaking type of film, just how like the Terminators and the Jurassic Parks and like the Jaws films were
Okay,
for like
now
me
I
growing up.
equated it to Dune. You're equating it to like Jurassic Park. Like,
From a
let's.
production design standpoint, you know what I mean?
Uh,
I
uh,
could totally see it being kind of that like stepping stone, being like fascinated by how, although I don't know
mhm.
what kind of featurettes or behind the scenes stuff we'll get for this film or its like successors, but yeah,
I imagine for that stuff, you would probably want to go to the Jim Henson Puppetry Company, and like they'll probably have more in depth stuff of how they made it,
sure.
or like there's probably interviews out there with the puppeteers and like fucking Puppeteers Weekly or
That's the
something.
other
I don't know.
tough thing too right
That's
now is like all
that's
the
the
strikes happening.
that's
We
the
don't
thing
get
that
press
always
for.
that's the thing that always scares me, is how many people are actually into puppetry. Like you think it's a niche thing, and then like you look into it a bit, you're like, oh, there's thousands of these fuckers. They're everywhere. Someone you know could love puppets. Like, be
Do you or a
watchful.
family member know someone who loves puppets?
Um, but no, it's, I would say at least in production quality, you can't knock it. They put
Sure.
like
Totally.
whoever they hired along with the Jim Henson group. Um, and like if you look at the design of like the pizzeria,
Yeah.
and like the security room, like all of it is one for one. Like
Well, and
there's
like
like
all
shots
the
of
the
the
sound design
hallways.
too, right?
Mhm.
Like they use like a lot of the sound library from the original games, like the children
Mhm.
laughs. Also, like I mean, again, I don't know if you picked up on it at all or any of your friends did, but like Abby, the little girl, the Mike's sister, when she like says hello
Yeah,
in the
yeah, we
film,
picked up on
that's
that.
like
Yeah,
straight from the games, but
the big
like
balloon boy.
they would have had to have like ADR'd that in, right? Because like that sounds, unless they hired her specifically for
Well, I
being
think
able
the
to mimic
original
that.
I think the original voice actor for the balloon boy from Five Nights at Freddy's 2 probably too old now
Well,
to
yeah,
be a
that's
little
the
kid.
thing. Like it definitely couldn't have been her because she would have
Yeah.
been like 8, maybe, or like 5 even. Who knows?
Um, and I believe something positive is that I would guess positive. I don't want to speak on this because I don't have family member or anything like this or myself go through it. But I believe that the young girl was supposed to be special needs, and they don't like harp
Oh.
on that fact. Like they
Oh, like in universe, you mean?
yeah, in universe.
Oh yeah.
If the actress isn't and the kid was supposed to be, that's a different conversation. But at least like in terms of representation, I think they mentioned
Right.
it once where like the brother talks about how she needs to be taken care of specially and she's a special kid.
Right.
Um,
She's
that's at
obsessed
least
with
some
drawing and stuff.
yeah, like she
Yeah.
only draws and doesn't want to talk. So I think that's at
Right.
least like some good representation. They don't demean her for it. They don't like say, "Damn, I wish she'd stop doing this." It's just kind of like this is a fact that I have to live with, and I don't
Yeah.
think the aunt will take care of her because she's a fucking Karen.
Terrible.
I like wrote the most Karenist Karen aunt that they could, and it's like that actress put it off great. They
Yeah,
don't
that whole ant
discuss.
subplot is just insane for me.
They
So
don't.
ridiculous.
They don't cover what they tell the police about those dead bodies of the
No.
delinquents or her
Or
aunt.
who cleaned them up? Like the
Oh,
animatronic,
those
like
those
Afton
those
put
didn't
them
get
away, I
cleaned up.
guess.
They didn't get cleaned up because remember he sees
Oh right,
them.
yeah, he pushed them all into the one
Yeah.
storeroom.
And then like their aunt is just dead in his living room floor.
That never gets addressed.
And so I guess Vanessa moved it over with the police, like good old police corruption. She's in a coma. She's in a coma. Nobody's smoothing shit over.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
there's some
Who
unanswered
went
questions there.
there?
Maybe
Imagine
she
just
really
William Afton cleaning up the trailer park home before he goes
maybe
over to the pizzeria.
maybe the little blonde ghost boy was telling the truth. Maybe she really was just sleeping. Maybe he came in there with the intention of like not like killing her, and then she just like he stands there and he just sees her go like bottle of Xanax, wine, and it's like oh
I like to imagine Golden Freddy just puts her in a headlock and chokes her out
oh
until she falls
like
unconscious.
I thought you were talking about the Cat in the Hat like meme with like the baseball bat.
Yes, that's much better. That's so
Kunk.
much better.
She's just sleeping.
um, yeah, I think we can kind of just wrap this up now.
Mhm,
Otherwise, we'll just keep going into little nitpicks here and there.
mhm.
I think Michael, you put it very well. If you don't fall into those two camps of either being like the younger FNAF fan base, who's going in for like the references and the Matt Pat cameos and everything, or like wanting some like just very, very not
Base
hollow,
level.
just lighthearted, I guess.
Yeah.
Uh, gateway horror, then I think you'll probably get something out of it. Or if you want to go in with that kind of like cynical, like to laugh at the movie mindset, I think yeah, I could definitely see people getting a kick out of it.
I would say laugh with. It's like it's a very specific kind of cynicism
Right.
where you're like you're kind of happy it exists for the sake of having fun with it and not taking it seriously.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. If you were hoping for a like very horror, like very much embracing the horror side of the games, and like a kind of stripped back version, kind of how I was back to basics, just like killer animatronics, a security guard trying to survive, with like some good horror elements to it, I don't think you're gonna like find any enjoyment out of this film. Um, so yeah, I would say like if you're still really curious, definitely wait until it's like kind of spread across all of the streaming services, or like get a Peacock free trial or something. I don't know if you're really that desperate to see it. Um, yeah, not a recommendation for me overall. Definitely one of the like lowlights of the year for me. Again, like if you're wanting, like if you've never played the Five Nights at Freddy's games before, I would say, and you're like inclined to play video games, I would say just play the first few FNAF games if you want to like get involved and like maybe watch a couple of the very first like theory videos and stuff so you can pick up on the lore. But
Mhm.
yeah, that is kind of where we'll wrap it up for this episode of the No Score Review Show. Michael, thanks again for joining me this episode. Where can the people find you?
Pretty much just on our joined YouTube show, the Out of Focus. Have not uploaded in a while, but maybe something this Christmas if the stars align.
Yep. Yep. We can, you can go back and check out our backlog of movie commentaries, or you can go onto our podcast page. I think it's on most of the podcast services for us to discuss random movies, games, and TV shows, and all the tangents and chaos that ensues with that.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's always a fun time. I look forward to when we're able to find some time to do it again.
Mhm.
But yeah, you can find me wherever you're listening to or watching this episode of the No Score Review Show. Like I said, this should be premiering on Halloween. So if you need more spooky content to keep up the spooky spirits, I've got a playlist of horror movie reviews on the channel. It'll likely be linked at the end of this video for pretty much all of the horror movies that I've seen that have released this year. Um, there's a few franchise in reviews where Michael has been featured on, where we discuss the entire Conjuring universe. I recently did a franchise in review on the Friday the 13th movies as well, if you want to go check those out. Um, and yeah, other like more recent reviews. I finally uploaded my reviews for Saw X, the Vancouver International Film Festival, and for Killers of the Flower Moon. It's quite the array of uh, content reviews. So if you haven't checked those out, please do go and give those a watch or listen. Otherwise, you can follow me on all the socials at No Score or at No Score Reviews. And thanks again so much for watching and listening. And we'll see you all in the next one. Bye bye.